So, I just woke up a little bit ago, and I woke up to a massacre over on social media. Reddit, Twitter, Discord, and pretty much every other social media that any Path of Exile person uses is on fire. And what's the reason? Well, it turns out that GGG is massively nerfing Harvest into the ground, essentially. Now, I know I don't normally do these talking head videos anymore where I react to things. I haven't done them in quite some time, but the amount of people who are talking about this, the amount of people who have asked my opinion, the amount of people who are DMing me asking about what I think about Harvest has kind of pushed me towards making this video real quick. I'm actually giving up on stream time at twitch.tv/bigducks, which you should go follow, by the way, to make this video. So I made a post over on the Path of Exile thing talking about my thoughts, and I thought that would be enough. You can find that over on Twitter. You can find the link to my Twitter down below. It's big_ducks, but people seem to want a full explanation, so here we are. So remember, if you're enjoying this style of content, make sure that you like this video so that YouTube knows to show you more of it, and also if you enjoy particularly my style of content, make sure that you subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this. Now, without further ado, let's get into the video. Alright boys, this isn't going to be a super long video. I'm going to try to keep it concise. We're going to talk about the changes that happened, why those changes are bad for you, and things that could have been done better. So the changes that we're getting, there are two. If these were one or the other, we would have been fine. However, they're not. We got both of them. The first change that's happening is that some mods that had overly deterministic behavior have been removed. These include all annulment mods, other than ones that remove a mod that isn't a specific type before adding one of that type, and all type-specific divine mods. What does this mean? That means that anything that is, say, remove fizz, add a fizz is gone. Anything that said remove a fizz is gone. Anything that said re-roll physical modifiers on an item is gone. The ones that are staying are ones that are like, remove a non-fizz, add a fizz. Those ones are staying. If this would have been the only change, we probably would have been fine. I don't think that Harvest would have been impacted very heavily, because that would have at least made it a little bit less deterministic. However, the problem is that when combined with this next line, crafts that add mods of specific types, like physical modifiers, for example, like Explodey Chest, they know what they're talking about here, the items can now only be applied to non-influenced items, except for the existing mod that applies an influence mod to an influenced item. These two changes together effectively kill Harvest for like 95% of people who use it. Now, I know that that seems drastic, but it is drastic because this is a drastic change. There are content creators out there saying that people shouldn't have access to these super high-end items unless you're a no-lifer. There's people out there saying things like, oh, these changes are fine. This brings it back in line with what they're normally doing. And I honestly am just going to... You guys know I heavily disagree with all of those people. I like there being power in the hands of the average player. Now, were these powers too strong? Yes, but we're not getting anything back. We're literally not getting anything back that helps out these average players. We're once again just screwing over the lower tier players and completely catering to the very, very high 0.01% people. Those people aren't impacted in pretty much any way by these changes. They will still get their crazy items, they will still get all of their crazy stuff, and the average or slightly above average, which is most of my audience and most of the people that are in like the demographic that I cater to, most of those people get horrifically screwed by this. Like, this is not a good change for you. Now let's talk about the positives, I guess, of this. Previously, every seed in a patch granted an instance of that seed's craft. Now only some of the seeds do. So the idea is that they want you to be getting less overall seeds so that it doesn't turn into the black hole void of time that Harvest ends up being. I think this is an okay change, but this line right here that says higher tier seeds are closer to the 1-to-1 ratio from before, that makes me think that they nerfed how often the high tier seeds are going to happen. And if you remember back in Harvest League, we had an issue with higher tier seeds not spawning at all. So I think that if they put this change in, there might be some bugs once again. So we'll see. The other thing is that the chance of encountering a portal to the Sacred Grove has been increased by 60%. This makes it 8 now instead of 5. I mean, I guess that's cool. Part of the Grove encounter is now a map fragment that sometimes drops from tier 4 Harvest bosses. This is something that I said that they should have done forever ago. I also called the thing about them removing it from influence modifiers. I called that they would probably make it so that we couldn't do this. You can find links to a video of me over on the Inspired Learning podcast with Badger and Yoji talking about that. There's links to it both on my Discord and on my Twitter, where I said that exact thing right there. Now, why is this a problem for the average player? Well, it turns out that gamble crafting is not really used by very many people. I want you to tell me in the comments right now if you have ever used an Exalted Orb on a piece of your gear, because Chris up at the top here seems to think that people use Exalted Orbs on their gear all the time. Using currency items like Exalted Orbs or Chaos Orbs on your gear is a powerful, risky, and exciting way to improve it. Have you ever used an Exalted Orb on a piece of your gear? Like, let me know genuinely in the comments. If you're an average player, have you ever used an Exalted Orb on a piece of your gear? I don't use Exalted Orbs on my gear except for memes. Legitimately, I use them to trade for other currency, which I used to buy items. I don't use Exalt Orbs on my gear. It feels like a complete waste of time. And then Chaos Orbs being risky, exciting, and powerful. Do you find it risky, exciting, or powerful to chaos spam your items? I don't, so this just feels very out of touch here. So that is the crafting that they want you to have as a Path of Exile player. They want you to have the chaos spam, exalt, gamble crafting on your items. Is this something that I agree with? Not necessarily. I liked there being some ways to make cool items, right? So the problem that happens here is that now we can only use these effects on basic items. There's still a bunch of stuff that we can use, but let's talk about ways that we could have done this better and things that we're going to still be able to do. With the current changes that they show here, you'll still be able to make certain items like fractured items, synthesized items, which most people don't even use at all anyways. The only reason that people ever use fractured items and synthesized items are super high-end players. So average player, you don't get to do that. The other thing that you could do is you can craft things like the Ellie Hitbow. That's something that you can still do because it doesn't use any of these deterministic crafting type things. It's the RNG crafting. You can still do things like that. What are some ways that we could have fixed this? Well, one of the main problems with availability to these crafts is things like the TFT Discord. I think that the idea of trading an item to someone else and having them use something on it is an absolutely festering wound waiting to pop. I think that this is such a huge problem, and I don't feel like these community based servers that are around this kind of thing, it's just frustrating, it's not fun to use, it's not interesting, I have to jump out of the game once again to be able to do this. I don't think that it's a good solution. This kind of fixes that, and they said that, you know, they said somewhere in here, if I go and look for trade, it's somewhere around here. Here we go. Players also expressed frustration that the most effective way to get the best items in Path of Exile was to join a Discord channel and try to trade for these incredibly crucial crafts. First part of this that concerned us was that Harvest was critical in making the best items and hence made many other game systems obsolete. Second part was where it was inconvenient to trade them becomes far less of a problem if we can solve the first issue. So inherently, if they just make harvest crafting completely useless, then the TFT Discord isn't needed anymore. Great solve, GGG. Why would I use a regular Exalted Divine Null Orb when I can get one through Harvest that has a deterministic result? People didn't use Exalted Orbs or Null Orbs most of the time. The average player don't use these orbs because it's not worth it. That is the whole point. The Harvest things are worth it. Just make them harder to get in some way then. Make them more rare or something and allow people to still use them. I don't know, there needs to be some change that can be made there. Regardless, let's talk about ways that this actually could have been done better. So one way is that instead of reducing the power, we could have just reduced the availability. You could have made it so that if someone used a harvest craft on an item, it made it non-tradable. Make a new state where something is no longer able to be traded. That means that you'd only be able to use the crafts that you found on your gear. That's one way that you could have fixed it. If you are going to remove the power from an item, increase the availability. Make it so that we can easily trade the crafts in some way without having to use the TFT Discord. Like, if you're going to remove all this power from it, why not make it easier to trade? Why not make it so that someone can come into your hideout, open up your harvest bench, and you can set prices and whether or not you want to sell on all of your items, and then people can come in and use them? Why not make it so that there's an orb that can drop from Oshabi that allows you to trade a harvest craft? Make Oshabi actually worth killing. She's worthless to kill. No one wants to kill Oshabi. It's an annoying, poorly made fight with way too much health and absolutely no rewards. There's no reason to kill Oshabi, almost ever. There's so many things that we could have done better. There's so many things that could have been that we just don't have. So I implore you, if you think that these changes are bad, let GGG know. Let the community know that you don't like these changes. I personally think this is a very poor way of going about it. If they want to push specifically these kinds of changes, I think that there needs to be something given in return and not just a 60%, aka 3% increase in how often the Grove shows up. We need something better than this, because honestly, if we're just going to go back to gamble crafting, this removes a lot of what I really enjoyed about the game and my content and my ability to try to target the average player and make them a better player. This removes a lot of that when it comes to being able to play cool builds and do cool things. This removes a ton of that. So hopefully we can get something better. And that's going to be it for my thoughts, guys. Remember, let me know down in the comments if you've ever used an Exalted Orb on any piece of your gear whatsoever. Let me know what your thoughts are about these harvest changes. Do you like them? Do you hate them? I don't really enjoy them too much. I think we could have done so much better. After sitting and letting my thoughts marinate overnight on these harvest changes, this just doesn't seem like the thing to do to make things better. I feel like this is very, very off the mark. So remember, guys, if you enjoy this style of content, make sure that you like this video, subscribe to the YouTube channel for more content similar to this, and stay safe out there in raid class, and I'll see you guys in the next video.